You're here because anxiety is the problem. In fact, it's become such a problem that it's starting to monopolize your focus. It might even be reaching the level of an obsession. Well, funnily enough, that's probably what's making you anxious. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Box, mind coach and remedial hypnotist, and I've been working one-to-one with anxiety clients for nearly 15 years. And I have to say, I have the best clients. Not just because I get to see them transform from highly anxious to calm, confident and happy, which by default means I have the best job in the world, but occasionally they teach me something. A couple of months ago, a client said to me, "Tim, I've got the title for your next video. You're not anxious, you're obsessed with anxiety." So firstly, thank you to that client. If you're watching, you know who you are. Secondly, let's break down what that actually means and why that particular revelation represents such a vital shift in our relationship with our own thoughts and feelings. You'll often hear me talking on this channel about how the thing that perpetuates our anxiety and causes it to continue over a long period of time is our fear of feeling anxious. It's the fear that brings the concern, and it's the concern that fires up the anxiety response. So the answer to high anxiety is to, in some way, get to a place where you understand that anxiety isn't dangerous. It can't harm you, and it certainly can't kill you. It's just, at worst, uncomfortable. But here's something most people don't realize until right near the end of their anxiety journey. They're not actually afraid of feeling anxious anymore. That probably stopped a long time ago. They're just constantly checking to see if anxiety is still there. One of the most common things I see, especially in people who already understand anxiety pretty well, is that it's become not so much something they're afraid of, but something they're obsessed with. And let me explain what I mean by that. At the height of an anxiety issue, it makes total sense that we're constantly aware of how we feel. We notice every sensation, every thought, every shift in our mood. Why? Because at that stage, anxiety feels like a threat. So of course we monitor it, keeping an eye out for something we perceive to be dangerous. It's a very natural and understandable emotional strategy. It's healthy to fear threat. But at some point, this might change. At some point, we might stop actually regarding anxiety as a threat. Perhaps our mind realizes that this thing we've built up as the big danger doesn't seem to be doing much more than just interrupting our day. Or maybe we learn enough about the reality of anxiety to finally understand that feeling anxious doesn't represent some sinister malfunction. Either way, at some point, we found ourselves in the position of understanding that anxiety is just an emotional response that we don't actually need to get too worked up about. I've lost count of the amount of comments I've had on my videos or in my lives where people are telling me that they no longer see anxiety as a danger, but they're still noticing it and they don't understand why. They've been told that no longer fearing the anxiety would make it go away, and yet still it remains. Here's the problem you might recognize. You notice when you feel anxious, and interestingly, you also notice when you don't feel anxious. You wake up and think, do I feel anxious today? You're halfway through the day and think, hang on, I've been okay so far. You feel a moment of calm and immediately think, is this it? Am I finally better? But of course, that's the trap that many of us fall into. Anxiety may no longer be the thing we fear, but it's still the thing we're paying attention to. At this stage, anxiety and the repeated scanning for it has quietly become a habit. Not because it's dangerous anymore, but because it used to be. Your mind got used to the idea that anxiety mattered, that it needed monitoring. So now, instead of checking for danger, you're checking for absence. Surely it should be gone by now. Why am I still noticing it? Does this mean I'm not over it? And ironically, that checking is what keeps anxiety relevant. It's what continues to trigger anxious thoughts and feelings long after they stop being mistaken for a threat. So you're not suffering with anxiety in the same way you were, but because you've decided that anxiety shouldn't be there anymore, you're checking to see that it's gone, and thus creating more of it. So metaphorically speaking, you might not be searching the house for the dangerous intruder, but you are searching it for the squatter that you're keen to evict. The thing is, that moment we decide a feeling shouldn't be there, we of course turn it back into a problem. Now, it's not a problem to notice anxiety, and it's not a problem to notice calm. What creates the issue is the belief that you shouldn't be noticing at all. That belief quietly reframes your emotional response as maladaptive, as something that needs correcting, as evidence that something still isn't right. And your mind responds exactly as it always does when something feels important. It focuses on it. And what's the emotion your mind uses to focus your attention on something important? Anxiety. Before we go any further, have you checked out the members area of this channel? In there, you'll find hours and hours of extra anxiety and mind coaching content, including my full control system training and the Clear Your Head Anxiety Relief Program. You'll also get full access to exclusive weekly live Q&As. It's just £9 for a full month's access, and you can join by hitting the button on the homepage or clicking the link in the description of this video. See you there. So what's the way out of this? Well, it's not to stop noticing anxiety, and it's definitely not to force yourself to ignore it. The shift happens when you stop treating the noticing as meaningful. You notice feeling anxious? Fine. You notice feeling calm? Also fine. Neither requires action. Neither requires analysis, because nothing about the way you feel at this exact moment actually means anything. If you speak to people who have got the other side of their anxiety issues and ask them when was that exact moment their anxiety went, they genuinely won't be able to answer you, because at some point in that process that some call recovery, people unconsciously remove the question, how anxious am I right now, from the list of things worth monitoring. Not because they worked at it, but because it stopped feeling relevant. And when that happens, anxiety quietly loses center stage. You move on from it without really noticing. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. You don't need to be anxiety-free to be free from anxiety. You just need to stop treating it like something that deserves your constant attention. Let it come, let it go, and let your focus return to living your life rather than constantly monitoring how you feel while you live it. If the ideas discussed in this video are resonating with you and you'd like my personal guidance to help you get the other side of anxiety, then follow the link in the description of this video to book a free, no obligation consultation. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for weekly videos on anxiety and understanding how the mind works. But that's it for this one. I'm Tim Box. Always remember, be kind to your mind. I'll see you next time.